Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Christina Schindler is the CEO of several family companies, including the Modern Stone Age Family, the Modern Stone Age Kitchen, and Eat Like a Human. Her husband, Dr. Bill Schindler, is a three-time guest on our show. So be sure to check out his first appearance on episode 14, and more recently on episodes 223 and 408 of Boundless Body Radio. Bill and Christina give true meaning to the phrase opposites attract. While Christina is an educator and whiz with current technology, Bill is a professor and expert in primitive technology. Blending these opposite ends of the technology spectrum make for an amusing conversation over fermented home-cooked meals, but there's no denying they are both aligned to find a healthy balance in our modern world. Bill and Christina operate the Modern Stone Age Kitchen, a foodery that optimizes nutrition and modern foods based on the approaches they developed to nourish their family. Their current passion, the Eastern Shore Food Lab, has become an autonomous nonprofit and offers immersive classes on a range of topics, including cheese making, sourdough bread making, nose-to-tail butchering and cooking, fermenting, and foraging. Christina Schindler, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you so much for having me, Casey.
It is so good to have you. It was such an honor to host your husband. It's about time that we get you on the show. And it was so great to meet you in person for the first time at Low Carb Denver and to see you again at KetoCon in Austin.
KetoCon,
really fun. Yeah, super fun. Do you want to just offer condolences? So sorry to hear about the passing of your father. I know that was a really tough thing and kind of was ramping up in KetoCon. I have so much respect for you for holding it together and still presenting at that conference before you had to emergency, get out of there. So again, condolences and amazing job at that conference. You did really
I knew
good
my
job.
dad would want us to continue spreading the message, and that would have been the best gift to be able to do. And we were able to make it back in time and have a week with him afterwards. So it ended up.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, yeah, I know that was very difficult. First question for you though is it true or false that you did give Bill permission to be on Naked and Afraid?
True, I did. And he always hits me with these asks when we're on a run. So it's uninterrupted. We're both looking forward. You can't make eye contact, and he'll just drop these bombshell questions. And I know exactly where we were. We were running around our town park, and we're right on the one curve. And he was like, "So, what do you think? My students, they think I should go on Naked and Afraid." And thinking about it, I realized it's probably one of the safest environments for him ever to be in. Maybe after the first 24 hours, there might be some type of, tension, sexual type thing. But then after you get bit by all those bugs and you're starving and just trying to get warm or dry, it all ends very quickly. So he never did end up applying for that one. He ended up having the Great Human Race where he did get naked on that one too. That was another ask when we were running as well.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, so I guess in a roundabout way, it all did happen.
Nice. I'll have to pick up running to be a fly on the wall for your running conversations. These are the ones that made it on air. I can't imagine what won't make it on air. That's awesome. Yeah, we've heard so many stories from him, and so it's such a cool opportunity to hear from you as well. And we might be confirming or denying different stories that he's told us over the years. We'll call him out on those. I kind of one of my very first questions to Bill when we did our very first interview. So I have to say, I think I've maybe told you in person. I definitely told him we were a brand new podcast. We had no listeners. I was just reaching out to people that I had been following and people I respected. And I'll never forget, I mention it every time, I'll never forget your husband's response when he emailed me back and said, "Casey, I would love to be on your podcast." And it meant so much that I got to talk to him after following him and his work, like I said. And one of the first questions I asked him was, you're off doing all of these amazing adventures and traveling the world and all this stuff. And yes, you're bringing your family. They must be like kicking and screaming, coming along with you. That doesn't seem like that was the case. You guys were actively participating and you were kind of setting up a lot of the things that you were doing as well. Is that right?
Yeah, I was kind of the back end of everything and putting the logistics together on most all of our trips, other than when he was on the show. That clearly was very separate, and that was all Nat Geo was organizing all that. But anything that our family has been on, I did the logistics and the reach out. He may have had some of the contacts, but I was the person kind of putting it all together. And it's really important to have a balance and strike a balance. And the kids knew, okay, this is going to be the research, this is that part. But then there's also kind of the touristy thing that we would make sure. One I think of is when we were in Thailand. The beginning of that trip, we were with a weaver ant family where they actually had a weaver ant farm. Believe it or not, at first was mangoes, and they realized that they did better economically actually harvesting the weaver ant eggs for the local population. So we were there, and we also were at a cricket farm. And so we did 2 of those, and the kids ate all the eggs. They ate all the insects. We also were with someone who was making modern pasta using insects. And we did that in Bangkok. But then, at the end of the trip, we may have went down to Phuket and, snorkeled and did that type of touristy thing while we were there. So they knew that there was that piece of the research and learning from the current culture and actually past generations of how they had used insects in their diet. And then we were able to enjoy, some of the touristy things as well.
Well, that's just such a perfect example of what we mentioned in the introduction. A lot of your work is not necessarily trying to send us back to the Stone Age. You're the modern Stone Age family. And so it's cool that you were able to blend those two experiences. And what a great, kind of example of the work you guys are doing.
Yeah, it definitely, it works out really well because truthfully, if I didn't have some of the technology skills just to be able to figure out how to do some of the planning and putting it all together, it wouldn't have happened because it's really difficult to, especially when you're in very remote places, to be able to make sure all those pieces do come together and work. And I got to realize, it's a big issue. We're going to Sardinia next week and the house that we're staying at the end of the week has no Wi-Fi. And so our kids right now are 19, 17, and 15. And the power of Wi-Fi and the internet, especially at that age. And they've looked, we've had some conversations about it, but I think in a way they're actually really looking forward to just decompressing and being off the grid. And it's going to be very easy to sit on a beach and do that in Sardinia and get some vitamin D. So that will be after we do cheese research. And he just told us this week, see, this is the thing. I plan one part and I get all the logistics in place. And then he kind of plans the research and he's talking with the park service and everything. But we apparently are meeting with a traditional family who will butcher the goat and that will make cheese from the rennet that's in the stomach of an unweaned calf. So wow. 2 out of my 3 are cool with that. We haven't told our youngest because she's just an animal lover and she doesn't do well with that at all. Like when we were in Kenya and we did blood in the milk with the Maasai, she could not understand that she was 10 at the time, but she couldn't understand that the cow wasn't dying. Like she just saw blood and shut down, right? Complete, just shut down. And it's important that we meet them where they are and that we have a chance afterwards then to be able to kind of decompress what happened and talk through it. And then she was able to understand it. But in the moment, she wasn't able to experience it. But now she's been able to understand what's going on. But next week, the cheese, I don't think so. She'll take a pause on that one.
Yeah, that's okay. She'll be down by the beach getting that vitamin D.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's great. Okay, so tell us a little bit about that experience. I want to go all the way back and hear your story through health, which I know is very extended, but let's talk about that experience in Kenya. I understand that when the cows are punctured, it's just a little kind of a nick and they don't even really feel pain, right?
They don't at all. They barely flinch. And literally they're there with a gourd. And I probably have it behind me here because we have it. I'm sorry. I should have been ready with all my props behind me because I actually do have the arrow. And it's just a little arrow that they pop right in. And there's certain people who have that job because that's their role in the tribe. And they would catch it with a gourd. And then they also had a gourd there of fresh milk ready to go. And literally it was a mix and mixed it right on the spot. So you had warm milk, warm blood, mix it together and gave it to you in a little gourd. Now, Bill and I drank it right out of the big gourd, which I have to tell you, the smell was intense because the inside of the gourd to clean it all out was definitely charred, right? So that was all kind of, you had that smoky from the inside, but then you also had, just think of an injury, just smelling blood, right? That just metallic type smell and then warm milk. And that was a tough one to take a big, but then you're surrounded in a pleasant way with Maasai, and they were the epitome of health. I have never seen anyone, just their body structure, their wide teeth and their smile. It was amazing. And they literally subsist on blood and milk. And when they're there and you're in the moment, because a lot of people have asked, how did you do that? And your kids did it. When you're in their culture and you're right there in the middle of their tribe and their village, of course you are going to partake in all those things. And your Western kind of barriers just completely drop and you just become part of the moment. And, we have a video. Brianna took a little sip. So she would have been 15 at the time. And then Bill's take a real sip. And she's teenage eye roll. And then, and she didn't, she took a real sip because everybody was there. And it was, he says it was a chocolate milkshake. I don't go with a chocolate milkshake at all, but it's like a chocolate milkshake if you had a cut in your mouth because the blood going in it. It was very thick. So I can still smell the smell with the burnt on the inside of the gourd. Yeah.
Of course you'd still be able to smell that.
Yeah.
That is very intense.
Yeah. There's no Yankee Candle for that scent. Let's just say.
Let's just say that. Wow. Well,
No.
Dr. Chris Kenobi just sent me his new book, The Ancestral Diet Revolution, and he included a picture of a Maasai tribe doing some type of ceremony. And the dude that was jumping is in the air. He's got to be, it looks like he's levitating. He's in the air, like feet above the ground. And you get a sense of like, wow, these people really are truly healthy. They have big, wide smiles and white teeth and white eyes. And it's just so crazy to think that like we don't even have that many tribes on the planet anymore to be able to study this. I mean, like Weston Price getting out when he did in the 1930s as the perfect confluence of like being able to find some of these tribes and photograph them because we had cameras. It's such an interesting thought that that timing was so perfect, and that cannot really be replicated that much anymore.
No, it can't. When we went into 2 different tribes, specifically in Kenya, we were met with that same type of greeting where everyone was out there, and it's a vocalization that they do. I don't know if it's a chanting. I'm not exactly sure exactly what you call it. I guess more a chanting. It's not singing, and the bouncing. And it's kind of a funny story on the second tribe that we were with. We didn't realize this, but we were offered 30 goats and a couple sheep for our oldest daughter to marry someone in the tribe. And
Wow.
Bill kind of joked with the interpreter about it. And he was like, no, like, he's serious. Like, you don't joke about this. But next thing we know, we looked over and the kids were all with other kids and they were playing and dancing. But all of a sudden, speaking about the jumping, Brianna, and this other young gentleman were in the middle of the circle, and everybody was dancing and jumping around them. And we're like, holy shit, did we just marry off our daughter in the middle of Kenya? Like, we literally weren't sure if it was a marriage celebration because it was the 2 of them and everybody was jumping around. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're coming home with 30 goats and not a kid. So
that's
it's been an experience in many, many ways.
That is absolutely amazing. So what's the verdict? Is she married?
Well, we joke like she already has a first husband, you know.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Somebody from Kenya eventually is going to make their way over to where you guys are.
Knock on the door.
Yeah, totally. Wow. That's amazing. Okay. So part of why we don't have so many indigenous tribes anymore around the planet is because we've taken the best land, like all the most favorable land. We have taken over, we farmed over, we've shoved Bibles down a lot of people's throats and whatever. But so these tribes that you have traveled to and found, I'm guessing are in probably some of the least ideal places on the planet to really be able to thrive. What have you observed from some of these indigenous tribes? Are they suffering? Are they struggling? Do they have a terrible time? Are they hungry all the time? Like, what has been your experience traveling into some of these tribes? What have you observed?
No, not at all. I mean, I think one of it is, what is our version of food? Like, what do we see as food? So whether it was being in Thailand and these people were living on a weaver ant farm, which was mango trees, which actually mango trees sound lovely to live on a place like that. But their substance was what they got. Their protein was from insects. And that's definitely not a Western, thought at all. So they would, we wouldn't necessarily feel of that as food. Same thing in Kenya. It was very dry. So again, for them, their fuel had to be something that, again, from a Western eye, is not food. I mean, blood, we don't consider food. For us to be able to get blood at our modern Spanish kitchen, to be able to do a blood sausage, we can't get it. And that's something that they subsist on. So everyone that we saw was extremely healthy. Like I said, the broad white smiles, just very muscular, very lean, very tall. Not the bloated bellies that we see, anything like that. A couple areas where we were, where modern Western food was getting into the culture and where soda was a treat. And that was very interesting when people were so excited. And that was in Oaxaca, Mexico. They were so excited to share soda with us. We don't drink soda. And that was hard with the kids because they looked like, are we allowed to drink this? And I was like, yes, because this is like them serving a bottle of Dom Perignon champagne or something like that. That's the equivalent. But physically, the effects of that standard Western diet were already taking effect because unfortunately that food supply had gotten to them. So.
Yeah, interesting. Now, I remember Bill telling this story. I don't think he told it on our show. Maybe you can tell the story if you recall it. Didn't buying like a few 2 liters of like Fanta like actually save his life? He was in
Bolivia. Yeah, actually it totally did. So he was in Bolivia. This was, I think, the summer before COVID, and we were not able to go. Well, actually we were able to go. This is how our family rolls. My son got asked to play soccer in Brazil. So as you do, if you're going to Brazil, why wouldn't you tag on a research trip, right?
Oh, Totally.
So that's like how we roll. So Bill flew with Billy to Brazil, dropped him in Sao Paulo, and then he went to Bolivia, and he was one other place too. But in Bolivia, this is where it happened. He was doing fermented potato research, and he was up in the Andes Mountains. And anyway, he ended up at the end of it finding out, after everything had gone fine, that they were very worried he actually wasn't going to make it out alive, because there is this ancient story of this bloodsucker. And a bloodsucker was a white man who came in with a gray beard. And I love my husband, but it's getting a little gray. And apparently at night, when the village is sleeping, this bloodsucker would come in and literally suck the blood out of the natives and kill them. So there was a concern for his safety, because apparently like 8 years prior, they actually had, I think it was like tied him to the stake and killed him. It's like somebody else, like a researcher that was there. We didn't know any of this. Again, he tells me all these things when he's safely at home. But when they were leaving to go, his guide who he was with had said that they needed to buy Fanta. And he's like, I can't buy Fanta for these people. I'm coming here to learn about their health and nutrition and, you know, their heritage. Like, I can't bring them what I know is just going to debilitate them and their diet. They're like, no, you don't understand. Like, that's what they want. And he bought it. And at the end, they said that is what brought trust when he entered that tribe, because he brought Fanta. So the power of soda actually around the world has been very interesting for us too.
Wow. That's crazy. Wow. Okay. So I've lived in Brazil. I lived there for 2 years. Sao Paulo is absolutely nuts. Where did you drop the kid off? Like,
so he was there with a soccer team. So, and he plays for a Brazilian soccer club. So thank goodness they were all, you know, Brazilian, and they were there waiting for him. And then they went and trained. He was at a complex there, and they trained. Yeah.
Okay.
They had a very good time.
That's nice. I've seen kids in the streets play soccer in flip-flops, kicking like a pig bladder around, and I guarantee any 3-year-old there could destroy me in soccer. They are so good. It's like people are skating in Canada before they're like up and walking. It's like the opposite with soccer in Brazil.
So that's actually one thing we've always done in our travels too, especially when the kids were younger, because it's a catch of, okay, don't want them on devices and not exactly sure what's going to be there when we get there, especially if it's rural. But you could always play soccer. You could always bring a ball. So literally what we would do is we would deflate a soccer ball and bring a pump, and that traveled around the world with us. And then we started doing, I can't exactly remember the name of the book. It's called like the little red ball. It's a small little book. And it's the idea that everywhere you go, you leave one of the big red bouncy balls, like the kickball. So we did that when we were in Denmark and the Netherlands, and when we were staying in this village, and then we all wrote our names on it and we left the ball with them. And it was a cool way. And it's just a very simple way to be able to travel. So
that's amazing.
We always travel with a ball and a pump.
Yeah.
And you're good. It's universal.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, the pictures we have of our son Billy playing soccer in the streets around the world is pretty freaking amazing, because it doesn't matter what language you speak. Everybody gets soccer, and it's an easy pickup game. Like you could always have one more, right? It's no big deal. So you just one more and let's go. So I mean, now that I think about it, I'm excited for next week to travel again with him and see who he has some pickup games with. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I've been to so many poor neighborhoods in Brazil. I know how much that soccer ball would be valued. That would be, they'll play with that ball for 10 years. Like, it'll be there forever. That's amazing. Okay. Well, this has been the longest run up to ask you about your story into health. I know you got into health at a relatively young age, even before you met Bill. Is that correct?
Yes and no. I've always been healthy. Like, grew up in a family, nuclear family, younger brother. My mom cooked dinner every night, and we always had, there was always a protein, there was always a starch, there was always a veg. I mean, a full-fledged sit-down meal. But I actually became a vegetarian, as I like to say. I'm a recovering vegetarian now, in 7th grade, and I was a vegetarian for 15 years. So it wasn't until actually Bill married me as a vegetarian, which is crazy, and had our first daughter. And it wasn't until after we had her and I was nursing, I started to crave, believe it or not, kielbasa. And I'm half Czech, and it was something like my grandma would make growing up, would be kielbasa and like sauteed onions. And for some reason I craved kielbasa and started eating meat again. But I just actually started eating red meat within the last 5 years. And a lot of it is a result of the research that we've done in Bill's book, and being able to see the difference and feel the difference myself. It wasn't an animal rights thing, or it wasn't, sustainability. It wasn't anything. I just didn't like it. Like some people don't like broccoli. I just didn't like it. So, but now I realize how much better I feel. So,
yeah. Wow. I was going to ask for what reason you became a vegetarian. So what animal foods were you including for those 15 years?
I was including a lot of animal foods, dairy. So, I mean, cheese and those types of things. And I didn't even have fish now that I think about it. I didn't. No, my protein was peanut butter and nuts. And it's really funny. All three of my kids had peanut allergy.
Wow.
Yep. And I would keep in my desk drawer at work, when I was pregnant, a box of saltines and a tub of peanut butter. And that would be like my snack when I was hungry. And it's funny, all three have peanut allergy.
Wow.
So,
And a big game changer for Bill and Bill's life was understanding the harms of oxalate. We know that those foods can be very high oxalate. Did you also have any problems with oxalate dumping?
I feel guilty because I haven't. So, because him and I eat a very similar diet now, but one of our go-to snacks has always been almonds. And that would be the thing. We would get the bag from BJ's and you just kind of felt healthy. If you need something, a big handful of almonds. And I haven't had the issues that he has had in terms of his joint pain. And he's had his 2 corneal transplants. That has nothing to do with oxalates, but afterwards with light sensitivity. And he's been able to see drastic results of dumping it. And we physically have seen him dump the oxalates. So he's been, I'd say, oxalate free for 5 years or so now, as soon as he, really learned about the impact on his diet. And I will never forget, it was this time last year, we were in Disney World. We're standing in the middle of Disney World and I'm looking at his lips and I'm like, are you chapped? Like, it's June. It's not that warm to, to have chapped lips or something, dry out. And he was like, no. And literally through his lips, you could see the oxalates dumping. It looked like when you have dry lips and they're starting to, kind of scrape off type thing. It was unbelievable. And that's been 5 years. So you just think about where they're in your body and how long it takes to actually truly dump them. Yeah. And he hasn't been having them for that long. So,
wow.
You just think about how many people we talk about it here at the shop, well, if you have spinach for breakfast and you put it in your shake, and then you have a spinach salad, and then you go home and have sauteed spinach. That's just a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And it's so hard because if I were to, do nutrition coaching for somebody and tell them that burger and fries and a soda, probably not the best choice, pizza and a beer, probably not the best choice, they'd probably nod along and agree. But when I start, talking a little bit about oxalates, people do not want to hear it. These are our sacred cow foods that are the healthiest and best things we could ever eat. But a lot of people forget what Bill mentions in his talks. Like, I had nuts when I was growing up. As a kid, you got nuts and you got them one time a year and it was Christmas, and it came in a huge shelled thing that you had to literally work pretty hard to access the nut. You couldn't consume that many. I asked my grandparents, did you guys have spinach growing up? And they said, yes. I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And they were like, but it was just seasonal. We only got it at the very end of the summertime when it grew. It wasn't available all year round. And we forget that in a world where we can go to the store and buy mangoes in Toronto in January.
Yes.
Yeah. So interesting. Wow. Okay. So how did the two of you meet?
So my version or his version? We actually met the same day in 2 different places. So I will never forget, I was sitting in the back of a World History 2 class at the College of New Jersey, and he was in the front row, right in the center. And the professor asked, what is the oldest form of alcohol? And he shot his hand up and it was mead. So, and I remember turning to my friend Liza next to me and saying, how old do you think that guy is? Because he looks a little old. And he was right in front of class. And then fast forward to that night, I started a job as a new waitress at the Alchemist and Barrister restaurant in Princeton. And lo and behold, I walk in and get introduced to the new bartender who also started that night. And it was Bill. And found out that he actually was 5 years older because he wrestled out at Ohio State. He had a very, very good wrestling career, not so much academically at Ohio State. So, which is pretty cool. He's got a good story now looking back on it. He finished his doctorate faster than he did his undergrad. So him and I ended up starting at the College of New Jersey together pretty much at the same time, even though he had already put in quite a few years of college. And then we were able to finish together and we worked together too at the restaurant. So that was our first little soiree. But truthfully, we were best friends first, and I'll say it publicly, he was engaged and all that good stuff. So yeah, it's just funny how things work out.
Yeah. Was it challenging with his kind of traumatic childhood background of body image issues? He had an experience I've heard him describe at the beach that sounds horrific as a child, where somebody actually grabbed his
Oh
his
yeah.
sides or his stomach or something.
Yeah, I think it's actually in the book, or it's definitely in a podcast he wrote. So he does talk about, and that's the thing. When I knew him, he was very athletic. He was very fit. He was just coming off of a wrestling season. So I never knew him as overweight at all. So just that whole concept, it didn't resonate with me because I never knew him that way. But he's told the story about he was at the beach waiting in line, and there were some cute girls that came by and thought they were smiling at him, and then somebody came up from behind him and hugged his, grabbed his what are they, love handles, I guess they're called. And even to this day, he'll say if somebody walks by me and brushes that area, he'll tense up. Now I'm almost as his wife, I didn't even realize that was a trigger, but who would have known? But it's been good for him, I think, to be able to kind of unpack that childhood piece. And then he got very healthy, clearly with wrestling, but he had a very unhealthy relationship with food there because he would drop 20 pounds in a week.
Wow.
I mean, that is insane.
Yeah.
And he would talk about the runs he would go on wearing those sweatsuits. I mean, just absolutely insane. So it went from one extreme, and I knew the tail end of that piece, then to the other. And when we met, I feel like maybe it was just, it's funny trying to say this out loud now for the first time, but it was just maybe a comfort that we were very comfortable together, and he let his guard down, and, we worked out and we ran and stuff, but it just changed in terms of what we were eating and the level of exercise every day. So he ended up putting on weight in our early marriage. And I attribute part of that too to my mentality with being pregnant. If I was pregnant today versus when I was pregnant 20 years ago, it was my time to eat whatever I wanted because I was pregnant, and I could be fat, and it was okay because I was pregnant. Yes, I was nourishing a child, and I understood that, but it was also a selfish view in my point too, that I wasn't thinking about at the end, having to get it all off and that type of thing. And he joined me in that, kind of a view of pregnancy. And now it would be totally different. So afterwards, I remember we did the South Beach diet, like that was the trendy thing then, and those types. And it wasn't until we really started, for him, he had some metabolic issues, and I would get angry. Like we were we were two teachers, again, two starting teachers' incomes. We all know what that is, right? So when you go out for a nice meal, it's a birthday, it's an anniversary, it's not an every Friday night kind of thing. And I can remember going out, and he would have to pull over before we would even get home, and he would lose dinner. And I would be angry because I'm like, that's just money, like literally down the toilet. And my mentality totally had to change because we had a wonderful experience and all that. And then my poor husband, who's, suffering from these metabolic issues, but I didn't see him as that either. Like I didn't realize when your head's buried in the sand and you're just trying to raise a family, and we were both getting through grad school and all those kind of things, I wasn't thinking about the larger picture of what that really was a message of, and what his body was telling him that things weren't agreeing. So it's been an interesting journey. And now flip it with our own children. So our children eat very healthy. And now that they can drive, do I know that they're going to stop and pick up something? Yes, they do. The big thing is like, oh, they get a Gatorade. Okay. If that's what I got to worry about as a parent right now, I'll deal with them getting a Gatorade. But our oldest just went to college, and she had the exact issues, but at a college level, because now she's back from eating a very, very clean diet. And even with trying to eat clean in college, her metabolism wasn't able to handle it at all. And she was having, gastro issues because of it. It's just really interesting on the two extremes when you go, and then, so it's been an adjustment for all of us, but we talk about it, which is important, and it's really important how food does make you feel.
Yeah.
And I think people are finally realizing that food is the first medicine that we need to use. And unfortunately, too often it's not. We go to the doctor and we want the pill to be able to fix something instead of looking inside. And what are you eating? I have to, actually this morning I was at a sports medicine doctor with our son, Billy, because his hip has been bothering him. And I got to say, one of the first things she asked was about his diet. And I was thrilled to hear that. I was absolutely thrilled to hear that. And she doesn't know our background or anything like that in terms of, she's like, do you eat healthy? He's like, yeah, you have no idea how healthy we eat. But it was just the fact that she was actually asking that question just really brought some confidence back all around. And I wish more doctors would ask that question.
Yeah, so would I. I don't assume that they would be giving you the right information once they ask the question, but I agree. I wish they would at least go and ask the question. A couple I interviewed recently said, like, they went to the doctor for their own health concerns and nobody talked about diet. And then they took the dog to the vet, and the very first question the vet asked is, what are you feeding him? And it hit him like, oh yeah, like this would affect us too. If it affects our dog that's much, and that's the first question they ask, like maybe we should be asking the same question.
Absolutely. Or they'll ask, do you feed the dog food with grains in it?
Yeah,
So we're asking that about our animals, not
right.
even about us as humans.
Right. No, it's insane. And I think it's important for the listener to remember exactly what you said. You guys are on a journey. I could look at everything you eat today and be like so overwhelmed and think there's no way I could pull this off in my little suburb of Salt Lake City. Like I don't know lots of ranchers. I don't know lots of farmers. Like I know some and I can get some food somewhere. If I were to look at everything that you guys are doing and consuming, and the listener as well, they need to remember that this is a journey and there's always a step that you can take. And you guys had to take the same steps, right? Like your kids
Oh,
did
it has
not
been.
necessarily eat the same way that you do now.
No, I will be the first to tell you, our kids ate chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese. They did. They're okay. And they did. It's also where you are in your life and what you're able to do and time and those types of things. But we have kind of picked at different aspects of food. And one of the things that we look at and then kind of replaced it with the healthiest versions possible. So for us, one of the big things was growing up with the kids, making them their lunches. Was if they eat a sandwich every single day for 12 years of public education, 180 days a year, you can do the math right now for me, Casey, that's a lot of pieces of bread. So if you can at least, if they still want a sandwich, because well, let's be honest, it also has to be socially acceptable too. If you can replace that with a long fermented sourdough bread, score on that. You're changing their health trajectory drastically just by doing, introducing the sourdough. So that was one thing for us that we did that was relatively simple because Bill would make 5 loaves. We had Pullman pans. So he would do 5 loaves at a time. And then we would freeze 4. We would have one in the week. And I gotta tell you, we would freeze the bread in like a bread box. And the best thing is at night, you take out frozen bread and literally make your sandwich on frozen bread. And it's thawed by lunch the next day. It was a game changer. So lunch is packed the night before. That was a big one for us. Like fermenting our carrots was another big one because I know a lot of people, they food prep or meal prep and Sunday night, they cut up their carrots. I'm sorry, but by Wednesday, Thursday, they're getting gross. Friday, they're like disgusting. Your kids aren't eating them. But if you ferment them on Friday night, they're ready by Monday morning and they last and they taste so much better and the sugar content's lower. So there's little things like that we've done. And I think for anyone, who's starting at home, one of the first things is don't buy it. Like, don't put it in your cart for starters. And I think one of the other things that's difficult is removing it from your pantry because you've already spent the money on it, right? And it's like, oh my God, I'm just throwing out money. But you also are regaining your health and you have to kind of be able to flip that paradigm and know that by getting rid of it, and don't donate it because nobody else needs to eat the junk. Just throw it out, compost it, sure, something like that. We actually just did a oxalate dump on our pantry. And I literally, Casey, I had 2 big jars of almonds and they've been sitting there. And I don't know how long almonds are good for. They've been there for a long time. And I'm like, what am I holding on to them for? Like we had a bottle of tahini that was back there. That's very high in oxalates, so we did an oxalate dump on our own closet, which was kind of funny to be able to do that. But that's a big piece too. Just don't buy it.
That's the best story about oxalate dumping I've ever heard. Probably at least painful. You maybe took a hit in the wallet from buying it the first time.
Oh, I know. I just like, how much do we spend on almonds? Holy crap. That's a lot of money on almonds.
Crazy. Wow. That's amazing. Okay. So let's go back and tell the story. Like, so Bill was not originally, interested in nutrition outside of the fact that he just had, some body issues that he wanted to kind of clear up. He wanted to be healthy and wanted to have a good physique and wanted to be healthy. You had been thinking about food as well as a vegetarian, and he was doing a lot of research with like stone tools. Tell us about that kind of evolution of how that led to you guys doing more kind of like your study around like, I guess, understanding the way that humans should be eating.
So a lot of this resonated. Well, first, Bill loves to cook for starters. So that we have a very distinct relationship and he cooks and I clean and it works out beautifully. We're 2 halves on that one too. So he always has loved to cook and would cook healthy and gourmet dinners. But in the meantime, he was exploring archaeology and he is a primitive technologist. So what that means is he recreates the way people would have lived in the past. Specifically, let's use like a bow and arrow, stone tools as an example. The man can literally cut down a tree. He could put it into a bow stave and he could turn it into a bow and shoot it and go get a deer type thing. So we always joke like when the world ends, come to our house because we'll survive. So it's kind of, like a twist on Indiana Jones and MacGyver kind of all in one. And one thing he was very passionate about was stone tools. And there's a lot of stone tools. Let me grab one for you here.
This is great. This is so cool to see.
And the fact that I even know what some of this stuff is frightening. But this is a blade core. Okay. So this is kind of like the Swiss Army knife, but you see, if you can see each one of those lines that is on there, essentially you would pop off one of these. It's a long flake, like a knife. So this one rock here has thousands of knives in it. And the way that you would get them off is you would use something called flint napping. And Bill is very good at flint napping. He has gone around the world and learned from the experts, because there's one thing about my husband: when he puts his mind on something, not only does he want to learn how to do it, but he want to learn from the best person. So when he did his dissertation, this should have told me so much. Brianna was a year old, so this would have been 18 years ago. He recreated a fish processing village in the middle of the Delaware River where we lived. We were like a reality show, now that I think about it, before it was a reality show. Seriously, we lived with 10 people for 2 weeks in the middle of this fish processing village, only using primitive things, except we wore clothes. Okay. And he flint napped. They would harvest the fish. They used nets to get the fish. I mean, everything was primitive. He made everything. I literally was going to have my C-section. I'm in labor, and on the IV drip, you can see part of the net behind me that's hanging here. He's tying that net off my IV drip when we're about to have our first child. Yeah.
Wow.
He made literally everything. Okay. So we're on this island. He made it all. So one of the things he did would flint nap to make stone tools. Well, that passion continued, and we had moved. We now have 3 kids, and he's out in the driveway flint napping, because you can't flint nap in the house because of the silica in the rocks can actually cause something in the lungs. I can't think of the name of it, but horrible. So he had to be outside. And I just remembered, like, can you figure out a way to bring that energy, that passion somehow in the house, like with us? And I don't necessarily remember saying it that he'll tell the story too of me coming out and saying it, but it was that idea that you are so focused on this and you're so great at it, but I'm sorry, we're not making a living on selling stone tools. Like, there's only so many classes of people who are coming to learn how to make stone tools. Like, we need to figure this out. And meanwhile, he was a professor at that point in time, so this was one of the classes, but he then ended up having a light bulb moment in the shower, where a lot of great moments always happen, where he realized everything that he was making, literally the pots that are behind me, he's made all those pots. We've cooked in all those pots. All of it was about food, whether it was accessing food from a hunting weapon, storing food, cooking food, everything revolved around food. And even at that point in time, he was doing research on those pots. Like, he did starch grain analysis, where they would use the microscope and get in there on the grains to be able to see exactly what type of grains on some of these artifacts that, native people were cooking. So he had a little piece in that food world, but never did it actually impact kind of our family. And finally, though, when he made this food connection and then started looking at the ways we process food to make it accessible to our bodies, because you can't just go in the middle of a pasture and eat anything there and actually gain nutrition from it. As humans, we have to do something to the food. Pretty much everything we have to do. I mean, we can't rip into a carcass and eat anything. Our teeth aren't sharp enough. Our nails aren't sharp enough. So when he started kind of connecting all these dots, and then I think it all really came full circle when he did the show, The Great Human Race, because he literally lived from 3.5 million years ago with nothing. And for people who want to watch the show, like, you need to know, I'm speaking as the wife right now, it was 100% authentic. Like, my husband did not eat anything when he was out there unless it was period correct. And he made all his own clothes. So he had 2 weeks off in between each episode, or the series. They would go out for a month at a time and film 2 episodes, 2 weeks each. And then he would come back for 2 weeks. And literally in those 2 weeks, he was making the clothes for the next 2 episodes, literally sitting on our floor, sewing with sinew, all the leather and everything that he was doing. So it was completely authentic. And I think from him having that experience, it really brought everything full circle. For his side, okay, ancient side, and I'll take it high tech side for me, all of a sudden he is swept off to Africa to do a television show for literally 9 months. And we're co-parenting on everything. Like, we're 50-50, like I said, cooking, cleaning. He did the morning, I did the afternoon on the kids, off the bus, like all that kind of thing. And now my partner is gone around the world. That was huge. That was a struggle for us as a family at home. And also he did all the cooking. And I'm like, crap, what am I going to do? Because I didn't know what the heck he was doing. And one of the things that we would have every morning at that point in our lives was kefir. We would do a kefir shake. And all I would know is at night before we went to bed and like set the coffee pot up, he would take these grains, this like mystery bottle of white out of the cabinet, and he would pour water in it and scrape them like through a funnel type thing and then put it back in. I never could understand, still kind of blows my mind. But when you take milk from the fridge and put it up in a cabinet and it doesn't sour, and you're actually allowed to eat that, that goes against everything, you learned as a kid that your milk is always refrigerated. Well, then before he left, he had to teach me how to do it. And Casey, I gotta tell you, it blew my mind because I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I've been thinking for like 5 years, you were like this magical man in the kitchen. This took you 30 minutes. All you had to do was strain these grains, throw some milk over it and stick it back in the cabinet. Like you weren't doing anything magical. The bacteria were doing all the magic. So that for me was huge. And I think for your listeners, when you talk about changing the way you're eating and trying to eat real food, you have to think of it from an active time point and then a passive. So how much active time it takes to make kefir? 30 seconds, literally. It takes more time to wash the dishes than it does to actually engage in the process of straining the grains. Inactive, you got to be prepared that if you want that for breakfast the next morning, you got to do it the night before. And that's been a big one for us as a family, is figuring out time. You want a loaf of sourdough bread at night for dinner? Well, guess what? You're not putting it on at 4 o'clock when you come home from work. You got to have your mother out and you got to feed your mother, and it takes time. You want yogurt for breakfast. It takes time. And that has been a big one for us, is trying to figure out what that schedule is, and what works with that schedule, what we can make in bulk and what we can freeze, what has a longer shelf life. So when he left for the show, I learned a lot about food and how to feed the family, because I wasn't the one. I was enjoying it on the sitting down at the table, eating end, but not necessarily the preparing end. And I joke, and I don't like to say this because we don't talk this way, him and I, but it's true. When he was gone, I cheated on my husband because I bought yogurt from the grocery store and I didn't make it.
Yeah.
So I know. No, you are not allowed to cut that and ever say that my husband, because I don't even want to say those words out loud. But I mean, that's like, I felt so guilty. I'm like, if somebody's going to see me in here buying yogurt. Actually, it was funny. The other day I was in the grocery store and we were doing a class for students, and I went to buy some bread. And literally one of our customers saw me and she's like, what are you doing? You're buying bread from the grocery store? I'm like, no. I'm buying sourdough bread from the grocery store, and then like the white Wonder Bread, so the students can read the labels and we can talk about packaging and we can talk about all those kind of things. But it was hysterical. So yeah, I got called out for cheating in the grocery store.
Terrible timing. Oh, that's
Exactly.
terrible timing.
Exactly.
That was such a great explanation of, again, what we mentioned in the introduction: blending technologies, current technologies, ancient technologies. That is what makes us human. When a vegan says we are not supposed to eat animals because we don't have fangs or claws or anything like that, or carnivores say we're never meant to eat plants because our guts are a certain way and digestion is a certain way, we're missing the point that it is technology that makes us a unique species. We can live on 7 continents around the planet like no other species. And it is because we learned technologies to make foods safe and accessible, just the way your husband wrote about in Eat Like a Human.
Thank you very much. And it's nice to be able to put it into practice now. And people are realizing, we're getting a lot of really positive feedback, especially from people that are coming in here or eating this way, that they're like, I like that it's not a diet. It's not this dogmatic yes and no, that there's just an approach. There's a way, like when you go out to a restaurant and you look at a menu, things that you can get or not get, or different ways that you can order it. Last night we were out for dinner, and so we get a hamburger. Yes, we got it without the bun. We got it on a lettuce wrap. Just different ways that you can modify what's already out there when you're using an approach as opposed to a strict diet. Because I'll tell you, Casey, we've done keto, we've done carnivore, we've done low carb, we've done Whole30, we've done the GAPS diet. Name me another one. I swear we've done it. And
cabbage soup is my favorite.
Which one?
The cabbage soup diet.
Okay, have not done that one, and I'm okay. I don't need to do that one, I don't think. But and it's not just Bill and I, the whole family has done all these diets. And it's been very interesting to kind of go through the piece. And I will say the kids liked keto because keto had rules and it was easy and you follow the rules. It also was very, you could self-check yourself by peeing on the stick, of course, to see your ketone level. So that was always a very simple one. It was the joke, okay, what color are you? What color, like who was getting into ketosis faster? But what we didn't like about it was just all the fake stuff that was in all the replacement food. So it's like, okay, you can't have a cookie. Oh, but you can have a keto cookie. And this is what's in it. You can't have ice cream, but you could have keto ice cream. And then can you pronounce any of these things that are in it? So for our family, that works for some people. We have landed on, we don't want the artificial. We want real food. So truthfully, if we're going to eat ice cream, we're going to eat really good local ice cream made from local milk. And we're going to enjoy it. And that's okay. And we're going to enjoy it without guilt. And that's where we have landed. And it seems to work well for our kids. And it's been nice with customers coming in. They like that approach too, that they can come in and have a ham and cheese sandwich, because they know that ham was butchered literally on our counter. There's no nitrates or anything in it. They know that cheese was milk on Tuesday. They know the mustard that's on it has no industrial nut or seed oils or refined sugars. And the bread's a slow fermented sourdough bread that literally was the mother. And that's something else for your listeners to realize, that sourdough, there's no federal regulation on the word sourdough. So there's a lot of people will say that it's sourdough, and they might literally just add mother to it, and all the rest of the grains aren't fermented. And so people will think, A, that they don't do well on sourdough because it's not actually sourdough, or B, that sourdough's sour because they'll put acid in it to make it sour, and it's really not. So we've had so many people who have come in and had the bread, they're like, oh, but it's not sour. And we have sourdough cookies. Yeah, we have a sourdough peanut butter cookie. We make the peanut butter. We soak the peanuts. So everything, when I talk about a process, it goes through a process. It all doesn't go together. And that's, I think, blown people's minds. Like, you can have a sourdough cookie? Like, it's not just a loaf of bread, any grain. It's just the fermentation process. And it's not sour. So
yeah, that's amazing. Well, I want to skip ahead from all the amazing adventures you've had around the world to something that was fairly traumatic that happened to all of us, which was the 2020 pandemic. You and I would not be talking today if it wasn't for the pandemic. It forced us out of our corporate jobs and into starting our own business and starting the podcast and doing all that. So it was a time of a lot of uncertainty, but also a time of a lot of opportunity for people who are out there looking for it. Can you tell us the story of what happened to you guys through the pandemic and how you guys were able to shift and adapt?
Sure. So in 2020, Bill was a professor at Washington College. I was the supervisor of special education in Caroline County. And, clearly everybody had a different view of what education was going on then, and, Zooms and all those types of things. So we were just really trying to, like everyone, figure it out and try to make the best of every single day, and having 3 kids, and they were doing online school, and God, talk about stress. All 5 of us trying to do online at the same time.
Oh my
and
goodness.
It was just stressful. So one thing that we did as a family in terms of kind of food is we came together. It's so silly now saying it out loud, but we would do bone broth every day at lunch. So, because one other thing we were very concerned about was just keeping our health up and our immunity, right? So that was one thing that we focused on. And it was a way that brought us together, because we have always felt that being around our kitchen table is the best way to be as a family. And that's just like our sacred area. But as everybody's in their different places in the house, doing their virtual calls or whatever, at lunchtime, everybody came together and we had bone broth, and we talked about our day. We talked about the silly thing, who did what on the Zoom, what dog came through and did what, all those kind of funny stories. So that was kind of one piece that we did as a family that helped out. And then Bill at the college, he had a bunch of flour that was up here, was not being utilized. And he had seen that the social action committee in town was donating bread to local families in need, which was great, but it was just like white Wonder bread. And he's like, I've got all this great flour. Like, I can make sourdough. We can donate it. So Brianna, our oldest, she was 16 at the time, was like, well, Dad, I'll come up and help you. So they came up here and they would bake 80 to 100 loaves of sourdough bread a week and donate it. And they did that for a couple of weeks till literally the flour ran out. Now, meanwhile, Brianna's like, I kind of like this bread thing. And she was totally bored with online school. She's like, I think I can make a business out of it. We're like, go for it. So overnight, it was the Saturday, Easter Saturday. And that Sunday, she put out samples to our neighbors. And it was a loaf of a piece of sourdough bread, sourdough cracker, and a sourdough focaccia. And she called it Rise by Brianna and built the website on Squarespace overnight, all online ordering. And she had 8 orders for the next Saturday to be able to deliver. And it was in our neighborhood. Great. Casey, it just exploded. Like, her and I would roll crackers on Wednesday night after I got done on my IEP meetings. We'd sit there and we'd roll crackers. We packaged everything. There was a local restaurant guy in town, awesome guy, Chris. He allowed us to have a wholesale distributor for flour, deliver the flour to his shop so we could get it, because the minimum delivery was $250. We didn't have $250 for flour, and butter. So he would absorb it in his costs and we'd go pick it up there. Just thinking back about how community pulled together in various ways to be able to help get this operation off the ground. So Rise took off so much so that on Saturdays, Brianna and I were doing 8 hours of deliveries. It was insane the amount of miles that we covered. And she just had a permit. So that girl got crazy hours behind the wheel because she drove all over the Eastern Shore here in Maryland. And then that June, Bill's book sold, Eat Like a Human. So all these pieces were coming together. I saw what my future looked like in education, and it wasn't necessarily the way I wanted to spend the end of my career. So I made the jump July 1 to leave and to focus on supporting the book, with that whole piece, and see where Rise by Brianna went. And ended up that we were able to bring Rise by Brianna into the food lab here. And despite multiple attempts to try to make it work within the college model, it just was not successful, unfortunately. So we made a huge jump the following year, and Bill left the college. So we now rent the building that we're in right now. I'm on the second floor, and the first floor. So literally, as I'm talking with you, there's probably 12 people right now that are downstairs doing lunch. They did breakfast, sourdough bread. I mean, Bill's rolling croissants down there. People are rolling in the door. I can see out the corner of my eye here. There's the front street, all the customers that are coming in. So we have a storefront, and Rise by Brianna is now our sourdough line of products. And the Modern Stone Age Kitchen is the name of our business, and where we make literally everything from scratch. So we make our cheese, we make our butter, all our grains are fermented, no industrial nut or seed oils, all our meat is local and it's butchered in-house, cured in-house, no refined sugars. So we kind of have some very strict guidelines that we adhere to. And I'm really proud to say that we've done it. And our big thing is we're trying to replace the foods people eat every day with the healthiest versions possible. So a great example of that is on Friday night. I know Friday night's a big one for everybody, pizza night, right? And our pizza is anything like what most people are used to. It's a sourdough crust, it's our homemade cheese, it's our house-made pepperoni and sausage. And when you leave, we've had so many customers say this, you don't have that belly bloat. You just don't have that gross. You don't have the oil spilling off of it. But what that means is we also can only do it once a week, because it takes us all week to make the ingredients. Sodexo isn't rolling in and dropping off mozzarella cheese. When it's gone, it's gone. So it's been a very interesting model to be able to make enough to be able to feed everyone and kind of have that whole cyclical piece going. But it's been very, very well received. And,
that's amazing.
It's cool.
Cool
I can't
story.
tell you how many people have broken being gluten-free here on our pizza. And I mean, and actually somebody last week, we did a class. She's been a vegetarian for 27 years and she broke it on our pork rinds.
Wow.
Pork rinds of all things.
Nice. Great.
Yeah.
Good jumping off point.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's so amazing. And again, if somebody would look at the way you guys are doing things and think, I can't make a pizza that takes a week to make. It's just not practical. It's tough. So especially for young families out there, what advice would you have for people who are maybe just starting this journey? They're becoming more aware of how to eat in a healthy way. What advice would you have for somebody that's just starting out?
Well, one thing is don't buy it, don't, in terms of processed food, processed is different, the processing that we're talking about, as opposed to processed food that we're all used to. The other one is think about what you eat all the time and try to find the healthiest version of that. And there's going to be different views on what is the healthiest version. But if you eat yogurt every morning, learn how to make yogurt. First of all, it's going to save you a hell of a lot of money. I mean, I remember when our kids were little and we weren't making the yogurt, you buy those big containers and they go through it fast. But think about what's the one thing that your family eats a lot of, and try to replace it with the healthiest version possible. Once you see those impacts, then it's almost a natural snowball. And of course, I would have to give Bill's book a plug, because each chapter in the book gives you recipes for all those types of things. So you can make our yogurt, you can make our bread. We're an open book that way. Make our granola. It's all in there and it's very accessible. I mean, our family has done it, so anyone else can definitely do it. And we're here to help along the way.
I love that. That's amazing. The book is wonderful. Just like this conversation, such a great mix of great stories and practical information that people can use. I am going to get out my calculator after we get off this call, and I'm going to add up how many sandwiches I had in my schooling years, and I will let you know what that number was. It was a very high number. So I think that advice is great. Just start with the things you already have around and try to make them a healthier version. That's wonderful. Christina, this has been so awesome to have this conversation with you. Where would you like people to go to find you, connect with you in your work, and to connect with all your companies?
All right. So first, if you'd like to hear more about the food, head over to modernstoneagekitchen.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Modern Stone Age Kitchen. And that's everything that we're making in the shop. If you want to learn more about the research end of things, head on over to Bill's eatlikeahuman.com. On that website, we also have online classes. So you can download those right away. You listen to this and you want to learn how to make fermented yogurt. We got a class on there for you there. And he's also at Dr. Bill Schindler. And our nonprofit is the Eastern Shore Food Lab. So that's at ES Food Lab. And you can get more information on all those places.
Awesome.
And please feel free, DM us. We love interacting and chatting with people online, helping them along their health journey, because it's been a journey for us too.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. You guys are always so responsive and so kind. It was really, really meaningful to me personally to be able to give you guys a huge hug in Denver.
I know.
And to see you again in Austin was amazing. So thank you for all of the work that you do, Christine. I really appreciate this conversation. I think people are going to take a lot out of this. Your work is incredible. We love Bill, love you. Thank you so very much for taking the time to be on our show today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Casey. It was an honor.
Absolutely. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.